Hi there, this is Meet the Ministers. My name is Shaun Bindley, and my guest on the program this evening is the Shadow Minister for Transport, Multicultural Affairs and the Arts. He's the member for Indooroopilly, Scott Emerson. Scott, g'day.
G'day, Shaun.
We're going to talk about growing up, your career prior to politics. You're the son of a member of the RAF growing up.
That's right, I'm a RAF brat.
A RAF brat, is that
yes,
the term?
So that meant travelling around for most of my life. I tell people that I went to 10 schools growing up in 5 states and territories in 2 countries, and they wonder about what a terrible student I must have been. That I've been chased from school to school. Yeah. It was just the reality of moving all the time with my father in the Air Force.
Pretty much every 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, look, that's very much the case. And it can be a very educational experience because you move around. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of years in Asia too, with base at Penang with my father there, but also travelling around Australia. So it gives you a nice broad view of people and different ways of doing things, and how people have different ideas of what's interesting to them. And I think it's been very, very good for me. But there are some challenges, obviously, also when you move around so quickly.
Did you enjoy it as a child? Was it an environment that you enjoyed being in, that sort of military environment?
Look, I enjoyed being on the Air Force bases, and when it's a different kind of world on those Air Force bases. Certainly. There was a lot of freedom, can I say, because some of those bases there, and so I remember when I was a small boy in Williamtown Air Force Base in New South Wales, it was gated off. But we had the run of the base, so there was a swimming pool there's a cinema up the road, and you never worried about strangers coming onto the base because they had to get through sentry guards to get on. Yeah. So there's a lot of freedom like that. The same as the Air Force Base in Darwin was like that too. That was a great thing. But there's also a challenge, obviously, moving. You lose your friends, and you have to make new friends every year or so, and that can be a difficult time sometimes.
I think that stands in good stead for politics, having to, I guess, make friends on the run, think on your feet, be good at fitting in really fast.
Oh, I think that's very much the case. Yeah. I think you've just got to understand. You have a better understanding that people have different attitudes to you, different experiences, and you've just got to listen and learn, but also to feel empathy for them. And you do develop that skill if you're travelling around all the time.
It's interesting because you don't have the option of saying, I think I'd just rather stay here. It's like you're already packing up your bags and you're on your way.
Well, can I say, when I had the opportunity to stay in one place, which is after I finished school and started to study at UQ, apart from a couple of years in Sydney with work, I have tried to stay in one place. I do like the idea of having long-term friends, which wasn't something you could really have when you're growing up moving around, so I do enjoy that. I like the idea of knowing places really well, knowing friends very well. The electorate I represent, Indooroopilly, it's where I've basically been since university days, and that's a great feeling, knowing all those people.
Indooroopilly, the western suburbs, it's the type of place people settle in and stay for the rest of their lives.
They do. I mean, it's funny when you talk about people in Brisbane. Some people say they're western suburbs people, or eastern suburbs, or north or south side. Some people laugh at me. They say if it's not connected to the Moggle Road, they don't even know where it is. So I'm not quite like that, but I do like the western suburbs.
Finished school in Canberra at the time. Why'd you make that decision to move back to Queensland and go do your university studies here in Brisbane?
It wasn't quite my decision, I have to confess. I got accepted into economics and law at ANU in Canberra and at University of Sydney and also UQ, but my father was close to retirement, and in the Air Force you can ask for your retirement posting wherever you want to be. And my mother came from Ipswich, which is where I was born when he was based at Amberley, and that was going to be his retirement posting. And so he said to me, mate, you go ahead for a year and a half, go to UQ, and we'll follow you up in a year and a half when I get transferred up to Amberley Air Force Base. So that's why UQ. But that worked out very well for me because, as I said, I met my wife at UQ, so that's been very good for me.
You spent a bit of travelling. You've had a long career in journalism, which we're going to talk about as well. You even managed to build on that early experience of travelling around. You spent a lot of time travelling overseas. I believe you spent a bit of time in the Himalayas as well. Yeah,
I did some trekking. I enjoyed trekking. I've done the Himalayas. I did the Kokoda track last year. Depending on how things go, and I can get a couple of weeks off, I'm hoping for Kilimanjaro in about a year and a half. So it's some of those kind of things I do, and I enjoy getting out there. I do enjoy bushwalking. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I went bushwalking up at Mount Lamington. That's where we had our honeymoon at Binnaburra, and this time we drove up to O'Reilly's at Lamington National Park. Got out of the car, hit the track, walked over to Binnaburra. So that's about a 5 hour hike. stayed at Binnaburra that night and then walked back the next day to O'Reilly's and stayed there. But I must admit, we've been married now for 20 years, and I think the years must be showing on us, because when we had our honeymoon, we did it in one day. So it took us 2 days this time. So, but it was still 50 Ks in 2 days wasn't too bad.
That's not a bad walk. It's not a bad walk. No, but people I've been speaking to on the program so far, generally the common slant seems to be a background in business and law. You studied law, you studied economics as well, but also journalism, and it was journalism that you chose to make your career in initially after leaving uni. Why journalism?
Well, journalism, I was just interested in it. I seem to be pretty good at university at it. I was doing economics and law as well. I did become the editor of the university newspaper at UQ as well, the Semper Floreat, and so that enriched that experience, that interest in it. And then fortunately the ABC came knocking at one point and offered me a cadetship. And I said, well, this is the way to go. So I took the cadetship. There weren't that many cadetships going at those days. Yeah. So I took the cadetship with the ABC, and that basically started that career on. I was always interested in politics, even as a young boy, in the reporting of politics. I can remember even as a young boy when I was in year 8, year 9, going down and buying the National Times at the time, which was a good read in terms of politics. and I was interested in that. So I quickly actually gravitated towards the coverage of politics in the ABC. I worked for the programs, eventually AM and PM, which are their current affairs programs, and did that, so that was very good. And then, really out of the blue, because I was very happy at the ABC, Paul Kelly, who's a well-known journalist, and at that time was the editor-in-chief of the Australian newspaper, he basically rang me up out of the blue and said, could you come work for us as a political reporter? And I said, that sounds great, Paul. He flew me down to Sydney to talk to me about it. I have to admit, that's the only time in my 10-year career with the Australian they flew me first class, or no, business class, I should say. All the rest was economy.
Sweeten the pot initially.
They did,
yes.
And that was it. I took the job, and that was the last time I saw the anywhere apart from cargo.
Yeah.
But I had a good 10 years with the Australian, both as a political reporter and as a bureau chief, and also stints down in Sydney as national chief of staff, including during the Olympics.
We're going to go to a break, but I dare say that give you a pretty rounded view of what you were getting into when you chose to take a career in politics.
Well, I think I was the only journalist that ever covered politics from the press gallery who's ever been elected to the state parliament.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll talk about that more. My guest on the program today is Scott Emerson. This is Meet the Ministers, and we'll be back after the break.